Welcome back to Slumber IV. At one point or another, I'm sure most of us have had a paranormal experience. Most events lasting maybe a couple minutes before we could just move on with our lives and look back on it as a spooky encounter. Sometimes that just isn't the case though. What if a haunting lasts much longer than that? What if, no matter what you do, you can't shake the supernatural? In today's video, we'll be going over 4 stories, 2 of which being paranormal encounters, the other 2 being something a little more unnatural. Well, if you consider ghosts and ghouls to be natural in the first place, that is. Anyways, I'd like to thank the writers for allowing me to share their stories with all of you. Their links can be found in the description. Remember, you can send in your own stories to rylhstories@gmail.com if you'd like to have a story featured in a video. Also, please drop a like and comment if you enjoy. Yes, I did just shamelessly ask for like and comments, but seriously, it really does help the channel out a ton. Enjoy the stories, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. I've always had a hard time sleeping. As a kid, I would stare into the darkness of my closet and let my mind picture wide-eyed monsters with sharp, drooling mouths, watching me as I stressed myself to sleep. It led to a lot of nightmares. Rituals of closing the closet door before bed, running to bed after shutting off the lights. Even after a while, I couldn't have a TV in my room because I kept dreaming things were coming out of it and hurting me. On the off chance I was too tired to allow my mind to play tricks on me, sometimes I would hear screaming in my ear just as I was falling asleep. "Wake up," they usually said. Or, "Hey." I used to chalk it up to an overactive imagination. Naturally, I was a fidgety child. I was prone to talking like it was a speed contest, and picking up 3 different hobbies a week. I've calmed down a lot, but some things just don't change for me. I still twitch, hence the username. Can't stick to one thing for more than 5 minutes, and have an extremely active imagination. Now that I see it written, it might seem like I haven't changed much. The main difference I see in myself is that I feel more awake. Daydreaming is harder. I don't see as many monsters in my closet anymore, but I still see them. Lately, they're getting more real. I've moved quite a few times since the monsters first popped up. With each move, my skin became thicker, and at one point, the monsters stopped appearing altogether. This last move was my first act of independence as an adult. I'm living on my own. No pets, no roommates. For the first time, I'm completely alone. Or at least I thought I was. See, the first few weeks were normal. I'd do my nightly routine, shut off the lights, hop in bed, and drift off to sleep with ease. It was a methodical pattern that helped my brain slow down, something I perfected over the years. That, coupled with the constant moves, completely banished the shadows in the dark. I think the last time I'd seen one was when I was 14. Then, on the 4th of September, I started to see them again. The same toothy, slack-jawed grin stared at me from the bottom of my closet. It blinks, sliding its translucent lids over the cornea and back. The eyes glow faintly, just enough to look like a trick of the light, except I know it's real. I could hear it breathing. It took me about 5 hours to fall asleep. The next morning, I got up in a daze and hurriedly got ready for work. I tried to shrug it off, but I couldn't help feeling like it was still watching me. Not a single light was off when I left. A couple days passed with no incident. I wrote it off as sleep paralysis, and went about my business until I had another visit. This time, he seemed to move about in the closet. He whispered to other little things in the dark and glanced at me sideways, as if he were sizing me up. I could see his teeth moving and clattering together. "Sweet taste," I heard him say. I won't lie, I got pretty paranoid after that. Every night I included shutting my closet door and putting basil leaves at the crack. I read online somewhere that certain herbs keep bad spirits away. Every so often I would buy live plants from a hardware store and keep them all over the place. The smell of burnt sage was constant throughout my apartment, even though I'm not very religious. I bought a few crosses from a local mission. Of course, I had them blessed. I didn't want to take any chances. Weeks went by without anything. Months, almost an entire year of nothing. So I got a little comfortable. The plants died off and I put the crosses away for aesthetic reasons. I didn't think I had anything to worry about. I even started to leave my closet door open again. Last night, he proved me wrong. Just as I was drifting off, I caught a glimpse of something moving in the corner of the room. I shot up and stared at the corner, only to find an empty space. My heart still racing, I settled back under the covers. Then again, it went from the closet to the corner. I froze in place, my eyes wide. He could see me cowering under the covers, and started to creep closer. My breathing got harder as panic took over my body. The veins in his eyes were blood red, and his eyelids made a slimy sound each time he blinked. His teeth seemed to wiggle with excitement as he drew nearer. His breath touched my cheeks as he hovered over me. I could feel the scrawny frame of his body push on the bed, his mouth pulling closer to my ear. "You can't starve me forever." Tears streamed down my face. He crawled back into the closet and slammed the door. I ran to the light, grabbed the scissors on my desk and flung the door open. He wasn't there. He only existed in the dark. Today I called in sick and went to get more plants. I put the crosses back on the wall. I went a little farther and got Bibles, Wicca books, moonstones, protection amulets, anything to keep him away. I'm even considering getting a dog or a cat, whichever does a better job of warding off the supernatural. I don't know what he is or how long he can last without food, but I know that this is only a temporary solution. Eventually we'll meet again, and it will mean the end of one of our lives. Whatever he might tell you, it sure as hell isn't going to be me. You know that feeling you get when you walk down a dark hallway? The feeling you get when the lights are out in the room behind you? The feeling that someone or something is right there behind you, inching its way closer to you? Well, whatever you do, don't ever look back. My name is Michael, and I just turned 20. I work as a security guard for a small office in a rough neighborhood. They sell paper, or something along those lines. I don't really pay attention to the other people there. I usually sit near the door during the afternoon, checking everyone that comes in and out. It's a pretty laid-back job, and it helps me pay for my night school. I usually only work during the day, and I've never been at the office past 6, but today my boss asked me if I could take the night shift, as the night guard had quit due to unforeseen circumstances, whatever that means. Anyway, I said I'd do it, but just for the night. All I really had to do was lock up and sit down in the main office and relax. Right? Well, not really. I was given a paper with a list of a few instructions, 4 in total. 1. Lock the doors in the main room once everyone has gone home, no later than 12 a.m. 2. Go through West Hallway and lock all doors but unlock door 6. Then turn around and do not move for 10 seconds. No matter what. After 10 seconds, turn and face the hallway. Then start walking. Taking a step every second. Don't look back. Don't ever look back. 3. Go to main office and hide under desk. Facing the front and wait for door 6 to close and lock. 4. Leave at 6:30 a.m. Do not lock the front door, but lock the gates. It started normal enough. I didn't know if they decided to play some kind of joke on me, since it was my first time, but they did a good job. I was scared out of my mind. The instructions were so specific, and just altogether creepy. What would happen if I took a second more or a second less? What if I missed a deadline at 6:30? What would happen to me? I tried to get the thoughts out of my head, and I focused on the instructions. I wanted to study them before the night shift, so that I wouldn't make a mistake. It was 11 p.m. now, and most people started to leave. Janitors and workers that stayed late all started to file out, each wishing me luck. I waited a while until every single person was gone. Why would they wish me luck? I had to focus. It was only for a night. It was probably nothing, but I just wanted to make sure. 15 minutes until 12. I decided to lock up the main room and head through the hallway. Lock all the doors, unlock door 6. Got it. Turn around and wait 10 seconds. Okay, I started to count in my head. 1, 2, then I felt the temperature change. 3, 4. It got a little colder, and that's when I heard the door. 5. It started to open. 6. Then I felt it. Like someone breathing down my neck. 7, 8. I was about to run, but then I remembered the instructions. I have to stay till 9, 10. I turned and started down the hallway. Take a step every second. My heart was beating out of my chest. My whole body was cold. I couldn't feel my hands. I kept going. Even though I was about to pass out from fear, I was walking through the endless hallway, leaving behind whatever that thing was back there, but I felt it watch me as I walked. There was nothing between me and it. If it wanted to, it could kill me right there. I didn't even know what it was, but I didn't feel safe near it. I'm halfway now, but I feel it standing there as I pass by the fire extinguisher. I see a glimpse of the beast in the reflection. I can't really make it out, but it's slowly approaching me. I think it knows I saw it. I start to speed up ever so slightly. My whole body is numb. I don't feel the ground under me anymore. I'm cold and sweating. Walking down the hallway, I'm almost there. I just need to get into the office and hide under the desk. I'm praying to God I make it. I'm praying to anyone that will listen at this point. I'm not scared anymore, it's much more than that. I'm moving like a robot, just trying to make it to the end of this nightmare. I finally get to the door, but it's right behind me. I turn the corner and open the door, close it behind me and hide under the desk. I face the wall and wait. I wait for a while, and nothing happens, but I know it's there. I'm petrified, horrified. I'm so scared I feel my soul might just give up and leave. A few more seconds pass and the door to the office opens. Is it coming in? I didn't read about this in the instructions. What do I do? The instructions. I don't have them anymore. Where have they gone? Did I drop them? What now? It's coming in now. The room is getting colder as it enters. What is this thing? A demon? A monster? Whatever it is, it's not following the rules. It's looking for me. At this point, I'm in tears. I was trying to hold it in at first, but I didn't have to anymore as my fear took over. I couldn't move. My eyes blurred. I could feel myself start to black out. That's when I heard it leave and close the door. I wanted to let out a huge breath, but I know I couldn't. I keep listening for the other door. After a second, it closes, then locks. I let out everything, tears pouring down my face, breathing harder than I ever have. It's over, that's it. I just have to wait for 6:30 so I can leave. It's 6:23 now, just 7 minutes. I opt to stay under the desk until I can leave. 6:30 rolls around and I'm already up. I open the office door and rush to the main door, practically running out towards the gate. I get out and lock it behind me. I rush to my car and start it. I look back at the building and I stop in horror as the creature stands in the doorway, looking right at me. I hit the gas and head home. I handed in my registration the next day. It's been a few weeks now, and I've found another job, but I still can't get that thing out of my head. Sometimes I feel it's still behind me as I walk through my home. I won't ever look back. My name is Clara and I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I've always had an interest in the paranormal and in horror, especially asylums, as I've had several relatives admitted and pass away inside of them. I've lived in Melbourne for my 19 years of life, and not once had I been to any asylums. I've always wanted to go, but my mom always refused to take me. It wasn't until my 20th birthday that I convinced my best friend to go to one with me. There are several in Melbourne, but the one that always interested me was Arrowdale Asylum. Arrowdale is one of the most haunted buildings in Australia. Over 13,000 people died there. That was the place for me, so my best friend and I jumped in the car and drove the 2-hour drive to Ararat, where the asylum is located. We arrived just in time for the night tour. I could sense that my friend was nervous, scared even. I could sense that everyone on the tour had at least some nerves. Everyone but me. I was oddly calm, calmer than I had ever been before. That scared me. We joined a group of about 20 people. Like I said, I had never been to any asylums before, yet the place looked so familiar. It was as if I had been there before. I didn't feel fear, I felt pain. We walked through the men's ward. I felt dread. As we walked through the doors of the women's ward, I felt sick. I wanted to throw up. I had no idea what was happening. I hadn't felt sick until we walked through the door. I had been to countless haunted locations. Never had I ever felt this way before. It was my birthday. I wanted to come here so bad for so long. So I ignored the feeling of being sick and continued on. Our tour guide told us stories of patients and lobotomies and ghosts. I was enthralled. We walked down corridors, hearing scary and unusual sounds. It wasn't until we got to the surgery ward. I felt as if something was squeezing around my heart. It was tight. I leaned against the wall, but slid down, so I sat on the floor. Everyone in the group turned to look at me. My best friend slid down beside me, asking me if I were okay. The moment passed, and I realized how stupid I must have looked. The tour guide made sure I was okay. I apologized to the group, and the guide continued to talk. I couldn't shake the feeling of being embarrassed. I've always been a self-conscious person, so that didn't help. Out of the corner of my eye, down the hall, the dark hall, I saw a figure. The figure was a girl. Her hair was long and unkempt. She was wearing a dress that was ripped up at the bottom. Her arms were restrained in a straitjacket. She was at the end of the hallway, and I could only see her figure illuminated from the light outside that shined through the window. I excitedly tapped my friend on the shoulder, thinking that I had just seen a ghost. But when I moved my head to get a better view, there was nobody there. I guessed it was my mind playing tricks on me, as the tour guide was telling us a story. My friend was annoyed. I listened to the story, but I heard someone calling my name from down the hall. I heard someone whispering my name. Clara, Clara, Clara. I don't know what it was, but I was drawn to it. I slipped away from the group and followed the voice down the corridor. I turned the corner and I saw the girl again. This time I could see what she looked like. She was me. She looked exactly like me, maybe 10 years older, but still looked like me. She was still restrained in a straitjacket. The bottom of her dress was stained and threadbare. Her hair was matted and untidy and scruffy. Her face was dirty, and coming from the corner of her eyes, she had trails of blood that left blotchy marks on the jacket. Her eyes were bloodshot. "Clara," she continued to whisper. Then she dropped to the floor and began to contort in the most unnatural way. No longer did I feel calm. No longer did I feel like I knew this place. I let out a blood-curdling scream. I heard the group run to me and the body disappeared in front of my very eyes. I didn't want to be there anymore. I wanted to go home. Needed to go home. We left the tour early, and my friend drove me all the way home at 11 at night. I didn't talk about what happened for years. I didn't tell anyone. I never spoke about it. I didn't think it meant much, but it scared me for life. I didn't acknowledge it again until I was going through a photo album with my mom. At this time, I was 34. It had been 14 years since my trip to Airedale. We were looking at some photos of my relatives when one photo caught my eye. It was a picture of the girl I saw. It was exactly how I saw her. The dress, the straitjacket, the blood. I looked for more information on the picture. It was dated 1962. There was a name scribbled in the bottom right corner. Claire. I asked my mom about it. She said she was my grandmother. We never spoke about her because she was insane. And that I was named after her. Claire, Clara. I had never seen this picture before. I never knew any information about her. This is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. Now I can't get her out of my head. I need help, and I don't have much time left. I'm going back into the lake soon, and I'm afraid I won't be returning. This may be the last time anyone hears from me, so please listen to what I have to say, if only to save yourself. It started 2 days ago when I was out for a jog in the woods. There had been a crazy violent storm a few days prior which knocked a tree in front of my usual path. I decided to create my own path that day, and knew that even if I got lost, I could still use GPS to find my way back. The new trail started off fine up until I discovered the lake. It was small, not enough to show up on any map I've seen of the landscape. The water looked like oozing black oil, so opaque I couldn't see how deep it went. The top had a glistening shine to it, and in its reflection, the trees stood tall, but something about it put me off. The water twitched slightly as I got closer, leaning over the edge and staring straight into the water. When I finally realized what was wrong with it, I shrieked so hard that I saw birds flee their trees from the water's reflection. Despite how close I got to the lake, I couldn't see my own. Everything else seemed like the perfect parallel universe, one that didn't include me. As I focused harder on trying to see myself in the water, a figure jolted in the reflection. I turned as quick as I could, but when I did, there was nothing there. I looked back at the water, and behind the reflection of a tree stump stood a humanly figure clutching onto the wood. I rose to my feet and checked my surroundings. The wood stood bare, and I was the only one in it as far as the eye could see. I had thought I was hallucinating the whole thing, but when I turned to leave, I tripped on a rock at my feet. I fell into the slick black water that seemed to stick onto me for dear life, but as soon as I had tripped in, it felt like I fell right out. I lay on the edge of the water, my shoes still dunked in the icy cold. I crawled as fast and as far as I could away from that lake, but when I looked up, I froze. The sky was pitch black with not a star to be seen. It had been around 10 a.m. when I left, and sunset this time of year didn't happen until 5 p.m. I rubbed at my eyes as hard as I could. Every time I took my hand away though, nothing had changed. The only light that shone was from the lake. It was now an iridescent blue that glimmered and glistened and illuminated the surrounding trees. That's when I saw her. Behind one of the trees that surrounded the lake stood a girl. Her hair was long and black, and she clutched onto the bark like it was the only thing keeping her from floating away. "Hello?" I called out. She didn't move. I inched toward her a step, making sure not to get too close. When I was finally in distance of seeing her face, I knew something was wrong. Her face was ghostly pale, and her skin made her look like she was decaying. Her eyes were bloodshot, and she smelled as bad as raw sewage. "It's too late for you," the girl whispered. I flinched at her voice. It was light and delicate, while sounding like a gruesome growl. "What?" I began to step back towards the lake as her head shot to the side, checking behind her. "She's coming, and she has a friend. You're too late." The girl began to step closer to me, and with each movement I moved back until I was on the brink of the lake once more. She got arm's length from me and whispered one last time, "I'm sorry." With her bony arms, she reached forward and pushed me as hard as she could. I fumbled backward and sunk into the lake. When I came back up, it was daytime again, and I was shivering like a dog. After rising to my feet, I checked the forest around me. The girl was gone, so I ran as fast as I could through the trees she once stood by to get home. The trouble didn't end there. No, it had only begun in that lake. When I got home, I peeled off all my clothing and jumped into the shower as quick as I could. I could still feel oozy lake water on my skin, and I needed it off. I stayed in there trying my hardest to forget what had just happened, like a warm shower could brush off the past hour. When I finished and stepped out of the shower, the trouble began. I wrapped my head in a towel and stepped in front of the mirror to comb my hair. But when I looked ahead, no reflection stared back at me. I was like a vampire in those old horror movies, except this was terrifyingly real. I ran from the bathroom into my room, hoping that it wasn't real, but when I looked in my own mirror, there was still nothing. It was like I was gone from the world, like I had never returned from whatever land I was in when I stepped into that lake. That afternoon, I went from object to object, trying my hardest to see just a glimpse of my reflection. I began to realize that maybe this was what the girl was talking about. She told me it was too late. I wondered where the girl came from and who she was. I sat before a large mirror in my living room as I waited for my mother to come home from work so I could show her the problem, when an image moved behind me. It crawled quickly from behind the fridge to underneath the kitchen table, but not fast enough that I didn't see it. I shuffled so my eyes were set on the kitchen table, and there was nothing beneath the tablecloth. I rubbed at my eyes until they turned red, and when I looked back up, the image was gone. I sat alone in the room without even a reflection, and I was more terrified than I had ever been. Even more so when I saw the hair reflecting from the edges of the mirror. It was long, black as night, and slick like it had just been soaked. I scrambled to my feet as quickly and as quietly as I could, and plucked a signed baseball off my bookshelf. The figure moved slightly, and I could see the bony arm that was attached to the body belonging to whoever's hair it was. Without warning, the figure stepped into full view. It was the girl from the lake, but this time she was much, much taller. Her skin was blistering white, with cuts and marks all over her body that oozed mysterious black liquids. Her eyes were stark white, and her lips stone black. Her fingers stretched out to the glass, reaching forward. I screamed as loud as I could and threw the baseball as hard as possible at the glass, followed by its metal holder, and anything I could get a hold of until the glass had shattered so much it littered the floor. I knew I had made a mistake once I looked to the ground. Each fresh shard had the girl in it, reaching out to grab me. I ran as fast as I could from the living room, but each time I passed the reflective material, I could only see her and never me. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. When I pass glass doors, mirrors, water, even when I look into my necklace, I see her. Or not her. The thing in the mirrors. That's not the girl I saw in the woods. The one I saw was afraid. She was cold. She warned me. I know she's like me. Maybe she too lost her reflection. And that thing that's been following me is it. She told me that the woman in the mirror had a friend. Maybe that's where my reflection went. I don't know what to do. I can't run forever. But I can't let her reach me. That's why I'm going back to the lake. Maybe if I find my reflection, I can stop this. Or maybe I'll end up just like the girl behind the tree. I needed to tell you this before I did anything. If I go missing, I need you to know, do not look into the reflection of that lake. And if you see me in the mirror, please run.